Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the VUU. This is Michael Tino here in Peekskill, New York, just a little north of New York City, where it is a gray, rainy spring day, but my vegetables are planted and the flowers are blooming. The lilac bush right outside my window is fragrant and beautiful. And I'm here, which always lifts my spirits to be with my fellow VU hosts and all of you out there. How are you today, Aisha?
Hi, I'm Aisha Hauser in Seattle, Washington. I'm doing okay. Seattle weather is so interesting. I don't plant. That's not a thing I do. I love and honor and deep gratitude for everyone who does, because I would love to. It's not that I'm not hostile to planting. It's just not something I ever learned to do. But the weather, it's sometimes cloudy, sometimes sunny, sometimes rainy. But in general, I'm doing well and grateful for so many things. QuianaDenae, who's in the center of the country. How are you, boo?
I am well. For those of you who don't know me, my name is QuianaDenae, and I am here in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And it is rainy today. Like, it's the drizzly kind of rain. So it's like bigger than drizzle, but not full rain. It's kind of that annoying, like the windshield wipers don't need to be on a steady rotation, but it's like flump, flump. Oh, enough rain, flump, flump. Like, it's that annoying. Couldn't get the windshield wipers to wipe at the right consistency because the rain was wonky. But it's fine. Yeah, Ann Arbor's really chill right now. I think the pattern of life that we're used to here is that it's right around the end of we're leaning into graduation season. But what does that look like in your second year of COVID? So our town's a little weird, right? Like, oh, we're doing that? Oh, okay, I guess we're here for that. So it's just weird. Like, I'm so used to around this time of the year, I guess is what I'm trying to say, is that around this time of the year, I'm used to like not going downtown, making sure I know when things happen so that I can avoid traffic and people. And like, I'm like, wait, is that happening? Like, how do I navigate a city that's, functions as a university? So with all of that is to say, my friend Don, how are you?
Hey, everybody. I am here in South Jersey where it's kind of cloudy. It looks like it wants to rain, but it hasn't quite got up the energy to do that yet. And it is 74 degrees. Supposed to get up to 80 today. And I usually try and hold off on running the central AC, but if it's muggy, yeah, that bad boy's going on later this afternoon because it's just nasty to try and breathe water. But things here are pretty good. My lilac is not going to bloom this year. I am so sad. It's very green. It's got all its leaves, but it did not bloom again. And this is its second spring since I planted it. So I don't know if it'll ever bloom down here. But my irises are up and blooming, and I have one valiant tulip that comes up every year that came with the house. I don't like if it comes up out there, that's like, yay, good for you. Not anything I ever did to it. But yeah, spring is officially sprung, I think, here. Tanner, how are you doing? And don't tell us about your weather. Don't.
Thanks, Don. I'm doing well. I won't share about my weather, but I'll share. So I moved into a new house a few months ago, and we've been living with no blinds on the windows for those months. So we've been using like sheets and towels and just anything to keep the light out and the heat out. And finally last night we got new blinds installed. So not totally weather related, but I'm really grateful for that. Gives us some more privacy, some protection from the heat from the sun. And it is getting warm here. It was 80 yesterday. So hopefully this will help with the heat a little bit. So yeah, that's me. I will be taking your comments from YouTube and putting them in the chat for the hosts here. So if you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to share them, and I will make sure that the hosts see them. And I will pass it back to Michael.
Thank you. And Dawn, it's okay if Tanner tells us about his weather because he's in Sacramento now, where the weather is sometimes crappy. It's not like Southern California.
Right. I'm sorry. I forgot he migrated north.
Even if the rest of us are dealing with pretending to be Seattle or being Seattle, it's okay. What's going on in the Unitarian Universalist world this week, folks? I know that the best news that I saw was that a certain someone was accepted to seminary.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to say congratulations to QuianaDenae Perkins, VUU host extraordinaire.
All of Unitarian Universalism should hold a holiday for that.
Yes.
QuianaDenae Day.
I will hold my holiday when I, for lack of a better word, cross the stage. Or that's when that'll be the holiday.
Well, I look forward to recusing myself from your ministerial fellowship committee panel at some point. In the
you're
not
already
too
checking the
distant future.
box.
I'm biased.
Well, that's good to know. I like that. That's funny.
I am biased in your favor. What else is going on?
The RECC is meeting this week, the Religious Education Credentialing Committee. I saw them a year ago and achieved 2 statuses in a row because that's how I roll. I got the credential and the master's level credential. But this week they are meeting, and they are meeting candidates from all over the country, again through Zoom. So a shout out to religious educators who are going for any of the credentialed status in front of the committee. So yay, congratulations to all.
I just want to be mindful and just say thank you, not just to you all as my little VUU community, but also just the outpouring of support and love on Facebook, or where I announced that I got into seminary. I just really, we talk about community, but when you live in a beloved community, when you are planted in that, when I'm really clear about the work I did versus the work we did, and by that I mean I did not do this alone, I'm not doing this alone. There's just a sense of community and a sense of support that I feel around going to seminary that just isn't about me, it's about us. And so I kind of really like this way that I'm moving around it being a village of people on a journey with me. So I just want to acknowledge how important that is to me.
And well, it was so beautiful, QuianaDenae, when I posted, congratulations, I love you. And you replied, we did it. I'm like, and I almost argued with you, but I'm like, I know what you're saying. It was beautiful. What a generosity of spirit you are, my dear friend. I adore you.
Well, and if you're doing this right, you'll never do it alone. Right? I mean,
True that.
Ours is a covenantal relational faith, right? We have to do this together.
And something I've said, and it's going to sound cheesy. So like, if you know what cheesy is, just be ready. All right. Just hunker into it. I really have been calling this not a, UU ministerial formation, but a transformation, that I have no clue what's going to happen on the other side of this. I have no control over what happens once I agree to, once I step through the door, right? So for me, because I know it's a transformational process, I'm setting up my support team, I'm setting up my work schedule and my classes, and that's all I have control over. That's it. So I can gather people, I can gather resources, but at the end of the day, I just have to have this massive toolkit and be ready for whatever comes at me. And I think it's a really healthy approach to seminary, a really healthy approach to grad school. And I hope it works for me. We'll find out if it doesn't. We will find out if it doesn't, because you guys are on the team. So it's going to be an adventure.
It is. I'm so happy for you, and it will throw curveballs at you that you could not imagine. It is. I described my seminary experience as theological academic boot camp combined with personal spiritual development, like open heart surgery while you're awake.
Yep.
It's just like everything you ever thought you knew, that goes out the window. And so I am excited to be part of your team, and I also know that none of it is going to happen like you think. Am I wrong, Michael? Am I wrong?
You are so not wrong. You are 100% spot on right. None of it will happen like you think, and your
Nope.
team will be here for all of it.
Nope. Yeah.
Well,
I came into seminary as a former Catholic who had one Bible that they gave to me in 8th grade for baccalaureate or something. I now have 4 shelves of Bibles in various translations with various commentaries. It's the weirdest thing, really. It's just strange. Yeah.
So as we Tanner says, yeah. So I'm reading quickly and trying to talk. So we were like, what are we going to talk about today? And I wanted to really lean in if folks have the capacity. When I woke up to read my Facebook, because we don't read the newspaper anymore. When I woke up to read the Facebook, it was like New York is going to open as of like July 1st. And I thought, holy buckets, I don't have a personal reopening plan. What's my pod's reopening plan? I have a sense of my church's reopening plan. What's my city's reopening plan? And so I really just started to think about how am I going to move going forward? I'm being really intentional not to use the word normal. Because I don't want to go back to normal. And I'm really just thinking about how do we, after this, 16 months of sheltering in place or complete transition of how we live our lives, how do we move into what is next? How do we get to what's next? And then the other question I threw on the floor that we can riff off of is, what are some things from the last 16 months you're taking forward? What are some things that you just are like, I can't believe I started doing this, but now I would never stop doing it. Like if you started making your own bread and you haven't bought a loaf of bread at the store since then, is that one of those things that you're like, nope, I make my own bread now always. So I just throw that out there. And it led to this, to speak to it, it led to this really interesting conversation with my co-parent. Like, what is our mask situation? Who are we going to be around? Our kids aren't vaccinated. So what does that mean? So all of those questions just come up and I don't have an answer yet. I'm using this to kind of make up my answer if you want to know the truth. So if you got any ideas, please throw them out there.
Yeah, I mean, some of us do read the newspaper in the morning, so please don't cast aspersions on all of us.
Oh, I'm sorry. You don't, Ann Arbor doesn't have a printed paper anymore.
Well, you can get the New York Times online.
Qualify as old farts. I think that's us, Michael.
I don't especially since the pandemic, I don't actually take the paper thing out of the plastic thing every day, but I do read my news from the New York Times. And I have to say, when I saw that news about New York announcing fully reopening July 1st, I freaked the F out. Because I'm here, right? I'm here in New York, and it's not over here in New York, even if 50% of the adults in the state or 60% of the adults in the state are now vaccinated, 50% of the population of the state. And it's, I don't understand people who are eating inside of restaurants. even vaccinated people, I just I can't get there. I am fully vaccinated and I can't get there. So there's I think what many of us are dealing with, and I know I'm not alone in this because I've talked to friends about this, is processing the residual trauma that is living in our bodies and our hearts and our brains. That even if the science says I've had 2 vaccines and I have a 100% chance of not getting COVID bad enough that I will die, 100% chance. Even if I get it, it would be mild. My husband is fully vaccinated. My child, who cannot yet be vaccinated, has had COVID. That's a whole separate story. But thank you, school reopening, and is fine. But like she has she has some natural immunity that I know about. I studied immunology in graduate school, right? Like I know about these things. I know how vaccines work. I know how viruses work. I know how immunology works, and I still won't go inside a restaurant because it's traumatic. I still like I've been thinking, oh, I'm 2 weeks out from my second shot. I can go grocery shopping. And every time I start to leave the house to go grocery shopping, I start hyperventilating. And I'm like, nope, we're going to order groceries online. Okay, here we go. So I think there's a matter of like what's possible scientifically, and that's like category A. Like, what's possible scientifically, and then what's possible given the trauma that we've all been through. And that's going to be different for different people. Right? It's going to be different for people with different histories of trauma. It's going to be different for people with different social locations. And there's going to be a time where we have to like be respectful of the people who need the most stringent protocols in place to keep themselves mentally okay.
Yep.
When do you think that's going to happen, Michael? I haven't seen it happen yet. I haven't seen anyone. Well, all right. I have seen some, but I have seen a big chunk of the United States population who really doesn't care if other people need protection. You know, so I agree with you. We all need to accommodate those who are most vulnerable, and baby, I haven't seen it happen in the last 16 months.
I think one of the things that's coming up for me, to your point, Michael, and to your point, Dawn, in the United States, there is still the unwillingness by a vast segment of the US population to be part of a community. And that means thinking in the collective, right? That's been true with people who refuse to wear masks on day one. So I think there's a lot of things going on at once. And one of the things that I mentioned before we went live is I hadn't realized, because I wasn't paying attention, and it came across maybe my Instagram feed, that the United States, the pharmaceutical companies that are based here, haven't even sent enough vaccines to Canada, let alone to places like India, to other nations who have billions of people who need these vaccines, and they're simply being held up because of money. Like, not the patents are being held of, and it's just abhorrent. And it's a product of this, again, I'm going to say the term violent extractive capitalism, that in no way, there is a whole segment of the United States that doesn't internalize and doesn't experience this country, or doesn't put the needs of the collective. It's the toxic individualism, right? And it's all connected. So I don't know how we get there. I think for me, thank you for even suggesting a plan, because I live alone now. So it's like, I don't really have a plan, except that I'm excited to be around people again. And I have visited friends who are vaccinated and were vaccinated. I was able to sleep over a friend's house on an island off the coast of, actually friend of the show in CLF, community minister Deanna Vandiver and Jessica Star Rockers. I hung out with them this weekend, and it was nourishing. It was soul nourishing. But it's a lot of things. And my question, and especially because we're faith leaders, we are part of faith leaders. So what is our responsibility? How much can we inspire people, name the need for our survival to be a collective, to behave as if we're in a collective? The fact that New York City's opening July 1 is absurd. The governor in Washington State the word is we may go back to phase 2 because cases are going up. Everyone's waiting with bated breath, restaurants, because everything's going to shut down again if we do. So we're not even, forget talking about opening completely. Everyone here has been on pins and needles. Is the governor going to roll back everything? So
I think that's an important point, Aisha, and Michael made it as well, that where you are and what's going on in your community is going to have a huge impact. I'm not sure what criteria New York is using to make this call about July, but here in Michigan, I'm scared to leave my city because the rates and the numbers are so high. I don't want to walk into an infection pool. I don't want to be the infection that goes anywhere, and I need to take care of myself. So like, how do I find that balance of honoring that I'm a community member, but honoring that I need some level of respite? And it's a hard walk. It's a hard place to be in because I am community minded. We literally just talked about my mind. We are going to school. So if I go to the grocery store and don't have on a mask because I think everybody's been vaccinated, I'm still have the impact on the week. You know what I'm saying? So it's been this, when I thought about like a reopening plan, like we've been talking about it as a brick and mortar church, and we're using science and we're doing all of the things, but and to speak to something Michael was saying is like scientifically ready versus emotionally, spiritually, physically ready. And so, yeah, like, and having to think with my co-parent, like, okay, our kids can't get vaccinated, the adults are vaccinated. And like, what if they're at school the 4 hours they're at school every day and somebody in that space isn't vaccinated because they can't be and they're not mad? It's like all this actuary level math to decide how you're going to move everywhere. That math I'm leaving behind. I mean, I'm not leaving it behind, but I want to really bad. It's one of those things it's tiring to decide, okay, did I touch this? Did I move this? Did I use the right soap? Did I sing 3 songs of ABCs? It's a lot of math. But I think this whole piece about collective and personal is so important. We have the right to take care of ourselves individually, but we have an obligation to be communally aware of our impact. And then let's talk about this brick and mortar church thing. Let's go to that. So Don, being the pastor at a brick and mortar, how are you all doing that math? How are you all deciding how to reopen the doors?
We have a COVID safety response team that is chaired by a medical physician who is a member of our congregation, and she is really, really strong on the numbers and the science and all that other stuff. And our board president is also a science geek. He's an engineer, but he also gets the sciencey stuff. And I have to say that for this minister, it has all been just too much. And I find myself shutting down in ways emotionally that are really challenging. Because of the trauma Michael's talking about. So I've had to rely on my really good people to take the leadership role on this thing, because I'm just cooked. I mean, I have a family history of trauma that affects how I move through my adult life. And it's I find that I'm having to draw back from some of what's going on in my brick and mortar space. So it's everybody's different, and I want to like Michael also is a pastor of a brick and mortar church, but if I'm not mistaken, Michael, you're on sabbatical, aren't you? Are you or aren't you?
I am on sabbatical from that ministry, but we had a lot of conversations before I left, and
Michael, can I just apologize to you really fast? I knew that I know that you're a minister at a brick and mortar, but I thought you were on break and weren't going back till July when all of this was come to a head. So I wasn't trying to not acknowledge.
I am not going back until August, and the congregation has agreed not to make reopening decisions until I get back.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That they will do outdoor socially distanced mask gatherings over the summer. They will go on walks and hikes and have parties in the parking lot, but that they will not. They are not. We had these conversations. They were deep, and they said we will not consider indoor worship until at least September, so that and while we're thinking about gathering in person for in-gathering, which would be the Sunday after Labor Day, traditionally here, um, I told them to like do the research to rent a tent so that we can have in-gathering outside, so that we can plan an in-person in-gathering that's outside, even if worship then goes back on, to online only the next week. So they're not actually making those decisions until August. And I think that that's, it's hard to say we're not going to make those decisions until August, but we have all experienced how quickly things change. How quickly science changes, how quickly new waves of disease change, how quickly variants emerge and nobody's sure like what vaccines do with variants, how quickly things would change if there was a vaccine approved for children. And it looks like at least there'll be one approved for kids as young as 11 pretty soon. But still, that's not the younger kids. So we know how quickly things change. So as hard as it is to say we don't know what we're doing in September yet, and we're not going to make that decision until at least August, it's reality. It's reality based decision making, because we couldn't make a decision in February for September. And they decided, okay, the minister who has a PhD in cell biology is going on sabbatical, so we're going to wait till they get back. Which I just totally I appreciate that. I don't know.
And thank
It's
you for
reality-based.
modeling, Michael. We don't need to be in a sense of urgency. This has been going on. We're now over a year. What are we, month 16, 17, 28? I don't know. So modeling that there is, because there are folks, congregants and other brick and mortar spaces that are giving the leadership a hard time, right? So bless your congregation, bless you for modeling that there is no rush. Yes, this, I want to, if I may speak to my white siblings in spirit for a second. For those who, and I'm not, okay, let me first say, just be, if you grew up as part of the dominant culture and white, doesn't mean you have not felt pain or not had trauma. It doesn't mean that. It means that race and your identity may not have been part of that trauma. So this ongoing trauma that is collective, global even, is something that indigenous communities, descendants of enslaved Africans have dealt with for fucking generations, hundreds and hundreds of years. So my point here is, this is new to y'all, some of y'all. This collective trauma is new to those in the dominant culture who've been able to manipulate or know that most of what's been set up is for you. So know that thinking in the collective and not letting go of the sense of urgency that something needs to happen right now. Sit in the discomfort, have a spiritual moment, invite yourselves into spiritual growth, and be in the discomfort and still put the collective ahead of your own needs. You're welcome.
So that was a word. That was a word. I want to just step back into something that this language that we're using, which I'm fine with, but I want to just pick at it a little bit. We're talking about collective grief and collective trauma. Michael, the term you used was, and it hasn't stuck to my brain yet, was yeah, I don't remember. You brought up the word trauma, which is fine. And I guess I just want to talk about how do we collectively mourn and heal? We have, as a culture, in the last year, somebody I know will probably know the number before I do. How many people have died of COVID, and how have we collectively or individually mourned that? And how do we step into that now that we can have physical engagement as opposed to just online engagement?
And I want to offer something, and I can't remember where I heard it. I don't remember that, but the ability to heal from trauma is nearly impossible to start while the trauma is still happening.
Woo!
Right? So that like totally puts a different twist on this, especially when we've got that sense of urgency to go back, because we need to wait for the trauma to stop before we can start to process and handle it. And we've still got a ton of people who don't understand that this has been a trauma. You know? So I'm no source of wisdom. I seem to be only a source of additional little quips of anxiety. But there you go. Glad to help.
I think this part that you said, though, that's catching me, Don, is this sense that some people don't realize that we are in the middle of a traumatic situation. And that just hit me. When you said that, I definitely was looking for my pearls. Like, how could you not see the last 16 months as traumatic? And I wonder what happens to get that kind of lens, and then how do you move forward if your lens is that nothing ever happened? Does this 16 months just become like a blank on a radar? Like, I don't.
It's the same sort of, I almost want to call it a self-preservation denial that people in abusive relationships have, where they don't recognize the relationship as abusive. You know, they don't recognize that relationship as abusive. They don't recognize that situation as traumatic. They don't recognize this situation as traumatic because their brain does not allow them to see anything that can't be labeled their own fault or whatever, right?
Right.
Through their own weakness of some sort that this is happening. So people are complex, man.
Aisha, you look like you were going to say something, friend.
Yeah, I'm kind of taking in that about the healing while still in the trauma, and then a whole segment of the population in denial about the trauma. That's the story of the United States, though, isn't it? There's people in denial about the Confederacy. I mean, that's part of like our DNA, the United States DNA of choosing to be willfully ignorant, choosing to rewrite. I mean, I'm laughing out of frustration and disgust, really, that choosing to rewrite facts as it's happening. I mean, the anti-vax movement is a thing. So
flat Earth people, come on now.
Flat Earth, what's happening here? So this denial of trauma, of reality, of the facts, it's a combination of privilege, I think, and a group of people who tragically want to cling to what a community that, I mean, the group who followed the former administration do want a sense of community. Like when I can be my compassionate pastoral self, I can see their tragic strategies to fill unmet needs. And the unmet need is the need to feel they belong. We're humans, we're wired to be connected. I can have compassion for that. Now, that compassion has a boundary when that connection then results in the destruction of other people, whether it's Black people, immigrant people, trans people. I mean, the idea that we have all these mass shootings and then there's a group of people going after trans kids, like, fuck you. So there's this, it's all connected genuinely to what we have to repair in this country. When we talk about reparations and people immediately start arguing with me about it, you can't just give people money. A, you can, so cut that crap out because we do it all the time with fucking corporations. Two, this is more than about talking about money. It is about what did James Baldwin, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed that isn't faced. I totally screwed that up. Nothing can, but unless it is faced, you can't change it. Sorry, James Baldwin. So what I mean to say is there is value for Unitarian Universalists. I'm going to now talk to my siblings in spirit, all of us, in holding the facts and the truth, not my personal truth. I like to talk about my experience because we need to have a shared reality and be clear. That's why I always say, don't go into this middle bullshit. There's no moderate. The fact is we're in a pandemic. The fact is we have to collectively care for each other. The fact is nothing should be opening for a few more months fucking anywhere. The fact is we should be sending vaccines globally. And you should be calling Congress people and putting pressure on big fucking pharma to stop with this shit. So having I've been quoting QuianaDenae in my mind all week. My values are centering human life, community. When folks, their values don't align with mine, I can have a boundary about that and still hold to my values. I'm not going in the middle. Stop with this moderate shit because it's complicit. It's complicit to the destruction and horror that we see happening.
I think, thank you for quoting me or like living or like trying to find that space. Something I posted on Facebook a while ago was this sense of like, and it ties into some of what you're saying, Aisha, I can see people do things that I'm not going to do and not judge them. And I had somebody respond to that and be like, I'm angry that all these people are doing, things that I can't do. And there, there was this frustration. But the truth is, if I hold all of that anger and angst about other people doing things that I'm not comfortable doing yet, it means it's living in me. It means I'm taking up heart and excellence and energy and joy space with other people's behaviors and thoughts that I can't control. So in order to, when we talk about the individual and the collective, in order for me to survive this trauma, I can't take on being angry with everybody who's making choices that are detrimental to the whole. If I do, my spirit just gets so heavy and so weighted. So I have to like really focus on the things that are aligned with my spirit and acknowledging, you know what, you made choices I didn't make. I acknowledge your choices and I acknowledge my choices to do something different. It doesn't mean I hold you as a less than a community member, and it doesn't mean I'm holding anger in my heart for you. It means that we have to take divergent paths so that we can come back together later on when it's more appropriate for both of us. And I think sometimes as I think about reopening, I think I have to think about it that way. That I have to make choices so that I survive this, knowing because of how I am, it's connected to the larger whole surviving this. And I have to honor that everybody's not following that model. Because if I start to take on the battle of trying to make sure everyone has on a mask, everyone's vaccinated, everyone does what I'm doing, it's just going to kill me. Like it's going to kill this heart space that I've been able to cultivate over the last 16 months and keep sacred. And I can't let folks infiltrate that. I can't let anger and shame and be a part of my heart space and thrive. I got to pick a hustle, and my hustle is thrive. Michael, I haven't heard your voice in a while, and you're not good at being quiet.
I'm not good at being
fussing
quiet.
at a squirrel.
I'm fussing at the world's largest squirrel, which is raiding my my bird feeder outside the window. And if it were like a pregnant female squirrel, I'd just let her be, but it is a boy squirrel, and I can tell.
The fact that you know that what pregnant girls. Wait, what'd you say, Michael?
I said it is a boy squirrel, and like he is showing his parts, so I am trying to get him off the bird feeder. Sorry, I do want to bring in some of the comments that people have been saying in the in the chat, James Snell wrote, "It's been trauma upon trauma upon trauma. Denial either comes from inability to empathize or numbness." And I think that numbness is what Dawn was talking about the denial that we put to protect ourselves. Because if we truly processed the fact that India, the hospitals are out of oxygen in India. Like if we process that fact and our country is not doing anything to help the people in India solve their own problem, our collective problem, it there I'm not making any sense, but there just would be too much for our hearts to handle. Also, then
Exactly.
like having to feed our children and get up in the morning and like find groceries and make dinner and like educate the kids and check in on our friends who are having a rough time and all the things that we have to do too. Like there's just too much.
Can I just remark that among those, particularly in the helping professions, those in ministry, those in medical and mental health care, there's not a lot of room to feel all that stuff. And frankly, with the 4 years of the last administration and then 14, 16 months of this nightmare, depression and overwhelm are utterly reasonable responses to that situation. And to keep a stiff upper lip or a cheerful outlook or whatever else, I don't think models I don't think it is a model that is universally helpful. Some people can do it. I can't. And this past 4 years and then 16 months has just been brutal. And, in every new piece of thing I see on the news, I see how our culture, our United States culture, which is its own weird toxic mix of stuff, is complicit in really obvious and painful ways. Painful to observe, painful to understand that I'm a part of this culture and I have ownership in some of this stuff. And yeah, depression, overwhelm, exhaustion are all very reasonable responses to this long-term trauma.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think the model, the stiff upper lip, ignore that it's happening, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, is some white supremacy model of behavior shit. Because I don't flow in those circles primarily, I mean, I have to because I'm on this continent and I deal with money. I flow around the edges of those spaces, but the core of the people I hang around are very community centered, are very much acknowledging the trauma, the pain, the hurt, the unresolved grief, the waves upon waves of brutality that they're experiencing. I mean, I'm from Minneapolis. My family and community is hurting at a rate and a level I can't even comprehend. And so there is communities that are acknowledging that, but I think in white supremacist circles, the way to be is if shit gets rough, you just suck it up and you move on as if nothing's happening. You create an emotional, spiritual wall that doesn't let you connect with your feelings, and you just push forward, and you expect everyone else around you to do the same. That's not realistic. It's not healthy. And it's created a generation that we live in now where folks don't even have enough capacity to watch a child be harmed by the people around her, reach out for help, and be killed. That people literally are watching this video of little Micaiah going and justifying her murder. So like that's what a generation of that is what stiff upper lip, that is what not acknowledging your feelings, that is what not acknowledging collective and individual grieving and healing does. It creates a society where we can justify the murder of a child. We can justify the murder of a child.
Let's
I don't want to be a part of
black child.
A black child.
Because this would never, what would be burned down right now if that was a white girl? Let's be clear.
The whole damn city.
Sandy Hook.
Are you trying to imply, Don, that Polks didn't burn down Sandy Hook? Or tell me why you said Sandy Hook.
No. What I'm saying is this culture cares more about its wants and needs than it does about the lives of its children.
Okay.
This culture cares more about its need for substitutionary masculinity in the form of a gun than it cares about the lives of little children in a classroom. This community, this culture cares more about machismo and swagger in the form of policing than it does about the lives of children, particularly the lives of children of color. This is all, you can chase it all back to the toxic marriage of white supremacy and masculinity and toxic masculinity. But the two mix there, and children die and nobody does anything.
Yes, and I don't disagree with anything.
Yes, and you're right. Yeah, no.
And when everyone saw what happened with George Floyd, the world went on fire, right? There were mass demonstrations globally. When Black girls are murdered, that does not happen. And we need to name that. There are not mass demonstrations right now for Ma'Khia Bryant. So I want to, that's been coming across my feed and I want to amplify that. They're, white teenagers, I don't even want to say his name, the 17-year-old white boy who walked with semi-automatic weapons was allowed to exist with semi-automatic weapons and murder people. But
Kyle, what's his name? Yeah.
Whatever. I don't want to say his name. I'm saying that intentionally. I don't want to give him any. I'm learning to not, I want to focus on those who need to be amplified, and it is not murderers. It's a yes and. It's a yes and. It's not it. But what I'm saying is there's so much broken in our society when there are folks arguing for the justification of murder by the state of Black people. Ma'Khia, she held a knife. I don't want to hear that. I worked with youth. I de-escalate. I've had youth come after me, and I've de-escalated. I'm a social worker. When I did that in my early 20s, we were trained to de-escalate, and I never carried a fucking gun. So, let's be clear about who is allowed to have worth in the United States. And I'll tell you, James Baldwin, The Fire Next Time, there's a book I read all the time. I have it right here on my desk. I refer to it, The Fire Next Time. If you have not read it by James Baldwin, read it again, read it over and over. But the destinies, white people, you got to stop. That is not very profound, but and to me, I think about we're faith leaders. There's an opportunity here to do what we're doing, and I'm half full,
so
trying to make it different.
Aisha, if I might, I'd like to bring us full circle. We're nearing the top of the hour, and I think there's a thread here that needs to be connected, that we as Unitarian Universalists are called to proclaim a radical interdependence that forces us to protect the most vulnerable in our society. That forces all of us to protect the most vulnerable in our society. And so that goes for COVID reopening plans, and it goes for Black girls, in Columbus, right? Like it's a single logic that we have to proclaim that we are called to apply to this world, and that those of us with power and privilege in our society have more responsibility to do that. But all of us are called to live that radical interdependence, because it's the only way we can achieve collective liberation, is if we see our fate as inextricably tied to everybody else's, and we understand that not everybody is facing the same threat. Not everybody is facing the same threat in our society.
Amen.
But I think it goes for, do we wear a mask as much as it does for, do we defund the police? Right? Like I think we can apply that logic in lots of places. Do we send vaccines to India? Do we reopen our city on July 1st? F no.
We have to stop centering money. We have to.
Yeah.
Money will be the destruction of this earth and the end of our species. That's not even hyperbole. There's evidence of that all over. It's why we're not sending vaccines to India. It's why we can't fucking ban guns. Money. It's a made up thing. Can I just digress for 1 second? Because this is very important. No, go ahead, QuianaDenae, and then I'll.
No, I was affirming you. I was saying yes. I was affirming you.
Okay. So I want to name for all my wonderful, beautiful Unitarian Universalists. There are two people with exactly the same first name. Me, Aisha Hauser, and Reverend Aisha Ansano. We are not the same people. Reverend Aisha Ansano is a minister ordained leader who's amazing. She is a friend of mine. We consistently get mixed up. So I want to thank the person who lovingly loved my sermon. I did not preach the said sermon. It was Reverend Aisha Ansano. So I say this with respect, that I just want to be clear. There are two people, and Aisha wrote something, I believe, for UU World a couple years ago, and somebody when I was at the brick and mortar ran up to me like, "Oh, I loved your article in UU World." I said, "I didn't write an article in UU World." Person argued with me. I said, "No, I assure you, I would know." And I'm like, "Oh, there's one other, there's probably more, but at least in leadership." So there's me, Aisha Hauser, also pronounced Aisha Hauser, but Aisha Hauser mostly, and the Reverend Aisha Ansano. We're two different people. And I invite us to just expand our imaginations and then Aisha, you have to forgive me if you're watching this. Someone had said to her they had a great picture of her at GA. It was me. So now I want to track down this great picture because I want a great picture of myself. Anyway, I digress. So just to let y'all know, there are two people who spell our first names exactly the same, and we are not the same. So just thank you.
And are both significantly involved in the Church of the Larger Fellowship, since Aisha Ansano is about to be the chair of our board. So.
Thank you for letting me.
Nobody has ever got me mixed up with Dawn Cooley. Should I be disappointed? We are the only two Dawns. We're the only two Reverend Dawns in our movement, I believe.
Well, we've got a Reverend Dawn Sangri here, who doesn't get mixed up with either one of the two of you.
Really? I do not know that person.
Don't get mixed up, but the Aishas do. Okay, I just wanted.
Right. Oh, right. Zing. Sorry.
Let us think about why that is.
Right.
So friends and family. Oh, go ahead, Don.
Although there's a similar thing that happens with Know Your Trans people. Yeah, I haven't been called Barb, but I have been called Sunshine, and I have been called CB. Somebody congratulated me on my award a few years ago. Ooh. My Angus MacLean award. Yeah, I was like, well, thank you, but no. So yeah, go ahead. No, that's I'm babbling.
So we're at the 12:55 mark, and I guess I just want to give everyone space to kind of share their last thoughts before we close up, because we've been all over the human map today, and I'll start with my final thoughts. The way that this faith works for me is I'm intentional. I do nothing by chance, nothing by accident. Every rock on my altar is there for a reason. Every grain of sand that's in my healing jar is there for a reason. And as I move into whatever this next phase of being is, I'm going to be just as intentional about the space that I keep, the way that I'm masking up, the distance I'm keeping, what I'm letting in my space physically, spiritually, emotionally. The thing I get to take away from COVID is I am not a victim, and I'm not a hostage to this situation, that I am a thriving person adapting to these unknown realities. So I'm going to move forward with intentionality, with curiosity, and with an empowerment that I can say no, no, you can't come in my house. No, you're not, that I can say no with power and feel confident in my decision, because it'll be based in keeping my collective pod safe, because it's going to be based in my individual, pod, and community being safe. And anytime I center those three things, I know that I'm on the right track. So I turn it over. I'm going to start with my friend Don. Your last thoughts before we head out, friend?
Good Lord, my last thoughts. I don't know. I guess what I've learned is what I learn every week when I'm here, is that I learn so much more when I keep my mouth shut and my ears open. And I will encourage all of my white-skinned siblings to maybe try that, because it helps. That's all I got.
Thank you all. I love being on the VUU with all of you. Live our faith out loud, live Unitarian Universalism out loud, affirm each other, affirm community. And the reason why I brought up the whole Aisha thing is I invite our siblings in spirit. It's connected to the othering. It's connected to what you named, Dawn, of all the trans folks who get confused. So, do what you can to genuinely affirm and recognize people in who they are.
And I guess I get the last word, even though I have preached a sermon today, my friends. We are connected. We are connected to one another, and we have to effing act like it. That's the bottom line. We have to act like it.
I think you're right.
In our churches, in our lives, in our grocery stores, in our voting booths, in our relationships with power, in our collective organization, we have to act like it.
And with that good word, friends, we are going to shut her down 1 minute ahead of time, which is amazing for all of us. Thank you for being here. We'll be here next week to talk about something with some people and do some things.
Bye, all.
Bye, everybody. Bye.